Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? It's that time of year where we start to cast our eye towards the summer transfer window. We look to detail the laundry list that Celtic have got on their table, or in their hands, coming into this transfer window to make sure the squad is stronger coming out this window than what it was going into it. And with all the success and all the joy we've had with the player trading model, there's going to be a few different moving pieces around the board, as it were. So there's going to be a really active summer transfer window. And in this series, we're going to kick it off by looking on our front doorstep here. We're going to be looking at the best players in the SPFL and the Scottish Premiership that we've came up against that, could be prospective targets. Lennon Miller is the top name that always comes in. We will touch on that in the video, but I really do think that ship may have sailed. But in the last summer transfer window, we brought in Luke McKeown, and traditionally, Celtic have done kind of well buying one or two players maybe domestically if and when appropriate. And I do think, like in this video and in all these videos, I'll be listing out players that I think are good enough, or certainly if we got them in, it wouldn't be, certainly when we're looking at the ones domestically, it wouldn't be like the end of the world, certainly, to be able to play in the cups and play in the league and all the rest of it. But there's only a few players, especially in this one, that I would think would be moves that we should be definitely making. Players that are definitely of the sort of profile, the right sort of age, and really still, even though they're domestic transfers, they maybe still have the ability to play into that player trading model that the club has done so well with, and is a huge part of the lifeblood of the club that gives us the ability to go and spend the bigger money on some of the talents that we might be scouting and we will be scouting across European and world football. Now, I watch football as much as God intended, so a lot of my opinions and a lot of the players that I spot out of the wilderness, maybe within this video, within the domestic league or even further afield, come from watching them and seeing them actually do bits and pieces, like actually being good players and making an impression on matches, being, depending on what position it is we're talking about, you can clearly see they are good at their job. But so much of what I do, like just full time and all the rest of it, is fantasy football based, and with the fantasy football matrix that I'm most familiar with and, see every player in world football measured against, really, it's one of the most accurate scoring matrices that, you're going to find across any football platform. You look at Sofa Score ratings and all these other apps that people have on their phone that go out of 10. Like, all these things are kind of fine and they all kind of do line up with one another. But the thing about the fantasy football matrix is that it's totally transparent, so you can see how the score is actually built, whereas in a lot of these other places you don't really know, everything that goes into the special sauce, as it were. It's all kind of kept hush hush. You can see all the statistics, you can kind of see what makes it up, but with this you can very clearly see what contributes to the ratings, what contributes to the scores, and all the statistics that are used for it come from Opta, just like all these other websites and everything else as well. So for me, it's the most robust. It's a very clear, very easy to understand system for good performances and players that are making a positive impact, even if maybe like the team loses or they're on a bad team, in air quotes. And it might seem a little bit, for lack of a better expression, childish to use that sort of, metric, or to use that sort of, facility to kind of gauge players and help kind of measure them against one another. But genuinely, like I've already mentioned, like I see all players in world football measured on this, and it is very accurate. Like I said already, very easy to understand. And genuinely for me, it is the best system out there for doing this kind of thing. And with the way football goes now, it's so data driven in so many ways. I like having that focus on it. It's like net positive actions, actual contributions that can be measured. And there's always that thing with statistics, which is why I watch so much football, that they don't capture everything and they don't always paint the perfect picture. So much of the opinions that I form on players is a kind of mixture on both of those things I've seen and felt with watching games, as well as then what does the data back up, or does it maybe show a bias, and that sort of thing. I'm always excited to catch the comment sections on these videos as well, to see what your thoughts and feelings are, especially with this video, because I'm starting on our doorstep, the players that we see play against Celtic, is, if any of these players made an impression on you, what have your thoughts and feelings been on them? And because you'll be able to see the ratings, and we'll go through the overall statistics in the league of where these players match up against Celtic players, Rangers players, and really everyone else, we'll be building a kind of list, our own kind of transfer target list, as this series progresses, and you'll be able to very cleanly see how some of these players stack up against one another. Now obviously these players play in the Scottish division, and we'll be comparing players that are in like La Liga and all these other places, and yeah, there is a strength of competition thing that the statistics maybe don't factor out, but you never get that in these kind of rating systems or whatever. But because it is on tangible metrics like success and like passing and duels and goals and assists and all that other stuff, that it's as level a playing field as you can possibly make it. So as this season rolls on and we get the transfer list, our kind of transfer list like built up, it's going to be really fun to see just how all of the players kind of compare and contrast against one another, because a big part of this as well is resource management. Celtic will have a finite transfer budget, and as much as we do want to continue to spend the money we did for the Engels and the Idas and all this kind of thing, it's not going to be for every transfer, and like we seen with Luke McCowan last summer, the club are still definitely not above or beyond making domestic transfers. And if anything, with some of the window where we brought in like Yang and Tillio and all these guys, like Kwon and whatever, I didn't mind that window too much, because if you're in this player trading model, you do need to have stock, you do need to have excess players that you can loan out. Like, you just need to look at Bernabe and Lagerby. Okay, we're going to make money on him. I've been saying that before everyone else has been writing the articles about it and whatever, but he has been killing it in Holland. And if you want to keep that going, you still need to keep bringing in random players that could be good enough, but if they're not, they will have suitors elsewhere. So also I'm kind of factoring that in a little bit, especially domestically with some of these players, because again, like, other clubs in our league are selling for decent money, and if we can kind of satellite into some of these positions like we see the other power clubs and other domestic leagues across European and world football do, it can just be easy money, really. As much as having insurance policies on any players that maybe do rise above the parapet and really do step up and could be good enough to come in and help us at the Champions League level. But let's just get stuck straight into it, because with this being episode 1, we have to start with the lay of the land. How does the squad actually look coming into this summer? Now, at the moment, Greg Taylor will be out of contract. Jeffrey Schlupp does not have a contract offer from Celtic yet on the table, and genuinely, after the Derby match we just had, I wouldn't be in a rush to offer Schlupp a contract. I know he did great against Bayern Munich and all the rest of it, and unless there's something that only the medical team and the coaches will really know about why he maybe, I don't know, he just doesn't feel. And I know he's had all the fan media that I catch up with, everyone's been quite pleased with him, and I've been pleased enough with him. I think he's earned his crust, he's earned his medals for this year. I definitely think the contributions he's made to this point and what you can probably expect to get out of him for the remaining games this year, he'll be worth everything that he's got, and he'll earn any plaudits and any accolades that he gets. But I think this should just be a 6-month kind of journey with Jeffrey Schlupp. So with Kieran Tierney signed on, he is at the moment the only left back we currently have. Adam Montgomery is out on loan at Queen's Park, and I think that was I was a bit surprised by that, because he'd done very well at St Johnstone. I think St Johnstone quite liked him, but there's some mixed emotions there, because some of the St Johnstone fans I speak to weren't too enamoured with him, but I think he had some moments, certainly. And it seems that the coaching staff at Celtic, he's on a fresh enough contract. They've not given up on him, but it doesn't seem that they're totally kind of bought into it. There has been the thought of Scales playing left back. I think we've seen him come off the bench in the last month or so do that, and not be domestically to play like Ross County at home and stuff like that. He'd probably be okay, but if Tierney broke down at the wrong time, this is not a good enough situation, really. Tierney, for me, we've did a lot of analysis on Tierney, a lot of coverage on the channel. You can find that very easily if you want to check it out. But Tierney, for me, cannot be relied upon for more than 5 games a month, and we really need to have a genuine, what I would call a handcuff situation, where you have another guy that's just as capable of playing that role, and that takes a bit of a priority, because we are kind of putting a lot of eggs in the Tierney basket. And because of the situation, we're getting him to take a pay cut, we're getting him for a free transfer, because we kind of want to watch, because he is still operating at Premier League level. He's still in amongst that Arsenal squad that are doing very, very well. And like I mentioned, when I seen him in La Liga last season at Sociedad, I point of recording this is before Scotland played Greece, so maybe we'll see some international acclaim come for him again. But he's still a top operator. He's still in the peak of his career. He just needs managed and operate at a good kind of level in that sense. But you need to push the envelope with this. You need to get another left back that can properly carry the workload, work the shift with him across the full season, across the 60-70 matches, whatever it is we'll have. It feels like because we've got Ralston in at right back with Alistair Johnson, the right back opportunity to do this is kind of stifled, because we're just going to keep Ralston. He's on a fresh enough deal. He's happy to be back up. And yeah, that's probably best left undisturbed for the most part. Just leave that as is until Alistair Johnson moves on, and then you need to go out and replace him with an actual first choice right back, which I do think, and we'll have another video on this in terms of who could be the sellable assets, who could be the big sale of the summer, as it were, because Celtic normally do get a big sale out there, and we'll rank that and discuss that in a different video. But I think Alistair Johnson is close enough to the top of that list where it's maybe worth mentioning at this point that I don't think a backup right back or anything akin to that is going to be anywhere near the agenda, especially with the focus we've got on left back. When it comes to centre back, it's quite clear that Trusty and Vickers is the preferred two right now. Scales is very much I think if Scales is happy to be Ralston, but at centre back, and he'll probably play more than Ralston, overall that Ralston's already clocked up 16 appearances in all competitions this season, so fair play to him. Never mind 6 games as well for Scotland in the Nations League. So yeah, like if Scales is happy to kind of get on that kind of train, then I think he's still in. And then when you've got Dane Murray in the squad or Welsh, who is out on loan and not doing that well in Belgium, there's maybe like 4th centre back, something's to deal with. But with Lagerbielke out on loan at Twente, and they've already said that they think they're going to be priced out of this. You know, he's done that well, and the way Celtic are probably talking, and maybe interest from other parties are kind of going, the Lagers is going to be a few quid, we're going to get some money for him, which is lovely. But again, I don't think the centre-back situation is something that is of urgency, you know, there's urgency there. I think if anything, it's just this, you know, who's the homegrown 4th? Is it Murray or Welsh? Loan the other one out, sell Lagerbielke, and then Montgomery is a question mark, and we've got this gap here to come in at left back. Now, before we quickly just touch on where we're at with midfield and striker, we know Bain is here for the homegrown third goalkeeper position, but Sinisalo, right, we see with Schmeichel having his contract extended now through to next season, which we all kind of suspected would happen. Sinisalo, one of the things he said when he signed for us was that Schmeichel was his hero, and this would be like a dream come true to be able to train and work with him. He's had that year of like Padawan and Jedi, if you like, you know, like just training routine, getting to know him a lot better. I think it would be a very sensible move to get Sinisalo out on loan domestically, or even to like a decent league across Europe. Like even if it's a bottom end team, as long as he's guaranteed to play all the time for like a team in Portugal, Holland, Belgium, even the second division of Spain or Germany, something like that. I think that would be a high value activity for the team, because then if Schmeichel, if we can't get him for a 3rd season for any reason from anyone, the succession plan would be pretty on point. We see every other big club operate in this way as well, that really forward plan their goalkeepers. And you know, you either give Sinisalo more minutes next year, you actually properly rotate him with Schmeichel at some points when you can, or I think you kick him out on loan and get him like in the deep end swimming at a good enough level where he'll be tested and he can put a lot of the practice and a lot of the development he's had on the training ground this year actually into play. So I do think a backup keeper a la Siegrist, you know, like I know Siegrist didn't really work out, but the strategy behind that, I wouldn't be totally against that, let's say. The midfield is quite obvious. We've got Odenholm, who's out on loan at LAFC, and the way their calendar runs, we're not going to get him back into the picture until January, so I'm not really thinking about him in any way, shape or form, not even in the Lagerbielke sense, until January. But we've got our 5 out of our 6. I'm not too worried that any of these midfielders are going to be on the transfer wish list for many clubs across European football this year, just because McGregor's the captain. Engels could probably do similar to what we've seen with a lot of players at Celtic, with a second year of that kind of progression, the same kind of numbers up again in the Champions League and domestic, how he's done so far, and then maybe for him. Bernardo's obviously been out injured quite a lot this year, and you know there's no chance of that. Same with McKeown. So we very much all know we need a 6th midfielder in here. Now, if we were just to get one more midfielder, and we're aiming to keep it around the level of somewhere between Bernardo and Engels in terms of the purchase, maybe we're talking about a £5 million player or something, we probably all want that to be an absolute rock of a CDM, you know, of a guy that can actually, you know, sniff out danger and be that shield across the defence. But with the lack of, like, you know, we didn't keep Iwata last summer, and with some of the players we've been linked to, you know, and we didn't get as well across the last couple of transfer windows, it doesn't feel like we're ever in the market for one. So I'm not too sure that will be the type we'll get. It might be somebody more closer to Bernardo, where Bernardo is like a defensive midfielder, but he's not like an absolute like anchor midfielder in that sense, where he can arrive late on the edge of the box and be effective. He does like to keep up with play. He does like to be creative also. So maybe a bit more closer to the Bernardo profile, where they've got very defensive leaning tendencies, but they're still like quite mobile and do operate in different areas of the pitch just as effectively. And then when it comes to the front three, like I think it's very clear that Jota, Maeda and Kun are the best front three. I think Dyson Maeda probably comes into the Alistair Johnson realms of we maybe need to worry about any interest that might come in the summer, but failing that, this will be the best front three. I think Yang's done enough to stay in the fold. We know James Forrest will also be in and around the building, but for Tillio, I think he's quite similar to what we're chatting about with like the other homegrown centre-backs, where he just needs kicked out on loan once again. As I'm about to delete Tillio off the board here, alongside Lagerbielke, I've forgotten that we have obviously Kwon, who's out on loan at Hibs, and I don't think Kwon's done enough at Hibs, where Hibs might even want to renew his deal. They've already done business in the summer already in midfield, it must be said, with Jamie McGrath coming in on a free transfer. So like, Kwon hasn't done it at Hibs, was okay at St Mirren, But we just probably now need to cut ties on Kwon, try and get any sort of transfer fee or a loan with obligation, anything domestically, back to the K-League, anywhere that will take him, really. That's nothing against him. He's just not stepped up with the opportunities that the club have tried to give him. And Palma, I don't know, he's kind of doing, I've not been keeping up with him too closely on Olympiacos, but I don't think he's certainly mad pulling up trees. I think it's a move they would probably do if it wasn't that expensive. The best the club could hope probably for this is Olympiacos just try and, get him on the cheap, so I can't remember what we paid for Palma, let's say £4 million or something. So if we got him sold for 2.5, I would just do that and move on from it. So we can hope and cross our fingers that something like that happens for Palma. Johnny Kenny, I'd love to see get a loan out domestically at a team like Motherwell, St Mirren, Kilmarnock, Dundee, one of these teams that are like good football teams. We've seen enough of them come to Celtic Park and try and do different things as well as be defensively compact. And you just need to look at the success Ronan Hale had at Ross County. Even, we just need Kenny to go and get that sort of experience. He's done it in the Conference League for Shamrock Rovers, which is brilliant, and he's been in and around our team now for the second half of the year. And next season, I think the thing that's only right is to get him out first team. Sinisalo kind of escalate. I was chatting about with that. If we are going to try and develop this guy and bring him on, the Shamrock Rovers things worked perfectly. This kind of period he's got back with the first team and getting that taste and getting that kind of proximity to, I could maybe just about get into this team if I improve here, and here. And then give him the chance to go out and put that learning out into practice and show ahead of, in the future, an opportunity for him could open up. It's quite clear, but that we do need another forward to come into the fold here, because when we've had injuries to Forrest, for example, it has just really limited us. I do think that we're probably more going to get another type of player that could cover for Dyson in the event it was sold or injured, or we had something happen to Kuhn or Jota, where Dyson you can then play on the wide in the wide areas, or this other player could maybe play in their stead and keep Dyson centrally. So I think this is a versatile forward we're going to go for. I don't think we're going to get another Adamida type. I think we're going to get something much closer to a Dyson Maeda type, someone that has that kind of winger potential, that wide forward ability, but is probably their A game is playing centrally. And I think this is a transfer, the replace Kyogo transfer is one that there'll be a lot of money spent on. The other midfielder, I'm not too sure how much we'll spend there. I would like that to be a significant transfer, as well as whatever we do at left back. But really, with some of the players we've even deleted off this, like the Palmas and the Lager BLKs and whatever, we should have like 2 or 3 prospects come in that we just kind of have a look at, and then we maybe decide on 1 or 2 players to, loan out or do some different bits and pieces with, whether they displace anyone that's in the incumbent squad already. And I know everyone loves Luke McCowan and Bernardo and Yang and whatever now, but if we could bring someone else in and they're like clearly markedly better, then these are players that you can very easily, do something with in the transfer market and that player trading model. That's just a good kind of practice. Now, I'm aware that we've kind of set up episode 1 like quite long-windedly here, so thanks to everyone who's still here and watching with us, but it's just important, I think, to put the lay of the land out there with the squad for where we're at, what we kind of need, and really just how it stands and how it looks at the moment. Now, I've got 13 players here. Now, 2 of them we've maybe just about missed the boat on, and I kind of alluded to one of them earlier in the introduction here, but I've organised them in positions so that you never know what club we're going to talk about next, you never know who we're going to chat about, and we'll run through it just as quickly and as meaningfully as we possibly can. But we start at goalkeeper, and there's 2 goalkeepers within the league that if we did do the Sinisalo thing, that we could get into the club like very economically, let's say, and would be able to kind of carry the water if something happened to Schmeichel, at the very least domestically. And the first goalkeeper is Ellery Balcombe. Now, Ellery Balcombe is owned by Brentford. He was on loan at St Mirren, was doing fantastically well there. Brentford thought they might have had maybe a need for him in the squad or another suitor for him. I'm not too sure what happened, but they recalled him in January, and then he ended up back at Motherwell. And this guy is huge. This guy is a very good goalkeeper. He's did very well against us for the most part. And this is overall the tail of the tape for him, how it's went this season. His ratings out of 100 for performances and goals. Clean sheets mean that you're going to be guaranteed to score 60 or better, as well as doing any other kind of meaningful, decisive action. And what I mean by that is assists. This guy has 2 assists this year. He got one against his former club St Mirren at the weekend at point of recording, and on top of 2 assists, he's also saved 3 penalties this season as well. A proper goalkeeper's goalkeeper, and he's shown domestically that, like you can see here against Rangers and a lot of other games here, where he's he's a good goalkeeper, And Brentford, I don't know if, what sort of transfer fee they would be after for him. Standing at 190 centimetres. I think that's like 6'1", 6'2", something like that. But his contract with Motherwell expires at the end of this season. It's only a 6-month loan for them. His contract at Brentford is 2027. The transfer market value isn't that high. If you could get him for that sort of price, I wouldn't mind doing that at all. He's had a lot of loans. He's had a lot of miles on the clock already for a guy that's 25, and a guy that, could be called upon once in a while in an emergency case situation where we'll let a prospect go out and develop for us to maybe then come on and, be the number one going forward. This could be a very easy move to make, even just as a one-season loan. And even if you look here, he's got youth international credentials, which really doesn't surprise me. I hadn't noticed that until right now, to be quite honest with you. But this is a guy that I've been very impressed with whenever I've watched him. And look at that, number 88. He is as well for Motherwell. Isn't that just a sign? The second goalkeeper I would suggest for this is Jordan Amisa. Now, Jordan Amisa is at Ross County, and this is a guy that came really out of nowhere. He's only recently got into the Ross County team because Ross Laidlaw got injured, and Ross the Boss Laidlaw had been the number one Ross County goalkeeper quite comfortably for the last couple of seasons. He was brought in as cover, and he did really well. The statistics here don't really show everything for him. I think he had a really good game against us, if you remember. His distribution was quite on point as well. And really domestically, he has been a standout goalkeeper, where I'm hearing other pundits and viewers of the game, as it were, give him plaudits and praise for how well he's done at Ross County, who really are under the cosh quite a lot, one of the bottom sides in the table. But one of the most interesting things about Jordan Amisa is he is a Bundesliga under-17 champion, which is a funny thing to see here for a guy at Ross County. They got him as a free transfer from Sheffield United. You can see here his contract expires at Ross County in the summer, so he's going to be a free agent as it stands at this moment in time. He's a Ghana Youth International, which, whatever that counts for. But before being at Sheffield United, he was at Borussia Dortmund. He'd came through the academies here in Germany before, when Sheffield United got promoted into the Premier League in the last couple of seasons. They brought him in as the backup goalkeeper to that Rangers goalkeeper that was a bomb scare. What was his name again? Fotheringham. Which is just funny deja vu, isn't it? But they then released him. Ross County have picked him up, and this guy's a free transfer in the summer. Having him as a backup keeper to Schmeichel where we loaned out Sinisalo, or even just signing him and selling him to somewhere else, or sign him and loan him back to a better team domestically and try and just sell him then later on without ever actually using him. This feels like a really easy, this feels like a tap-in, this feels like it would be just easy money made for Celtic, or an easy goalkeeper acquisition of a guy that has a strong youth pedigree and is just in no man's land now domestically. But backup goalkeepers is not really a big deal. It's not really a big thing. These are just two guys that, I think if we were going to be quite proactive on the succession plan for Schmeichel, would be guys that are very much worth considering and would be very easy, I would say, to acquire on loan, free transfers, etc., even nominal transfer fees, perhaps in the case of Balcombe. But one of the top priorities for me has to be another first team ready, probably the best way of putting it, left back. And when we look domestically, there is a number one candidate, there is a clear top candidate, and there is a player so good domestically that really, if Celtic aren't going to go and try and find another, for lack of a better expression, Bernabe, another prospect type player from around the continent, a youth player that's emerging in one of, Scandinavia, South America, North America, whatever, and we're going to try and do it domestically, there is only one player to look at, and that is Hearts' James Penrice. Now, he is 26, he's not a young wonder kid up and coming or whatever, but this is a guy, I've maybe got a bit of a soft spot for Penrice. I used to coach at Partick Thistle in their youth academy, Thistle Weir, and at that time Penrice had just broke into the Partick Thistle team. So I've always had a wee, Penrice, I always kind of looked out for him, and he has really had a massive breakout year. At Hearts, he's been absolutely exceptional. 2 goals, 4 assists, and then we've got 4 last man tackles or clearances off the line. So not just an attacking based defender, but a defender that can do some of the dirty work as well. And that upbringing, Partick Thistle had a good wee academy set up back then, got a lot of first team football early in his life, and at 26 he is an experienced SPFL level player. And Hearts have been just Hearts again, haven't they, this year? But this guy clearly has all the minerals, where if you told him Tierney's going to play 5 games a month, you're going to play 2, or depending on how many games there are, maybe a few more, I think he would be signing up for it, to be honest with you. Similar to Luke McKeown in that sense of, they're 26, they were coming into the peak of their career. This would be the biggest move available for them. The problem with this is you're probably never going to sell Penrice on. You're probably going to be quite similar again to the Luke McKeown thing, where you're probably just like buying them and keeping them throughout the peak years of their career until you're kind of done with them, and then you go back to the market again in 2 or 3 seasons' time, or 3 or 4 years time, and if you're more optimistic with it. But huge performances in all manners of games here, and a guy that gets, and when we look at the overall league statistics here, you're going to see him dominate in so many different key metrics defensively and offensively here, and a guy that's very, very capable of putting in big performances. His contract expires in 2027, so that's not going to be ending anytime soon, and Hearts will want a couple of quid for him. His transfer market value is 1.3 million. We paid about that for McKeown. I think Hearts would probably try and squeeze this for like 2 or 3 mil, just because it's Hearts. And according to this, has a bit of versatility, which is always nice to see as well in that sort of left back position, especially because we have a bit of muscle memory in the rest of the team for a left back that can maybe tuck inside once in a while. But like I say, this guy's been around professional football since like 2016, 9 years. He's 26 at the moment, so he's got he's not long in the tooth, I won't say that, but for a guy that's 26, he's had a good football upbringing. He's got a good, he's reliable in that sense. He's not a guy that's just burst onto the scene and he's only been playing, he's only had like 20 good matches or something. And I don't think domestically there's another left back that's worth looking at outside of James Penrice, to be quite honest, okay? But I must confess, there's been another couple of left backs that I have been impressed with, where it's like, wow, they actually are a really good left back in this league. They stand out in this league against the other opposition that we play. Would they be good enough to play for us? Probably not, but they're worth a little mention, I think. One is St Mirren's Richie Taylor, the 24-year-old left centre-back, kind of left-back. It's been pretty strong for them over, I think, the last 2 seasons he's been there. His contract expires in the summer. He's mainly listed as a centre-back here. There's not much of a tail of the tape in terms of like fancy academy upbringings or anything like that, but quite simply, just from what I've seen whenever we've played St Mirren, like physically, he's very much, he does a good job against our guys in the front line, and our guys are pretty damn good, so I dare say he could do a good job for us, kind of thing. Similar kind of vibes would maybe be William Ferry. Now, I've not seen too much of Ferry compared to like Taylor, for example, but the one standout thing about this player is when we look at what his actual contributions are to Dundee United, is they are quite interesting for a left back that could maybe make the step up for a team like us. He's got 4 assists so far this year, and as you can see, his overall contributions, his overall actual ratings here are very positive. Dundee United have been pretty good this year. They play a 3-5-2 with him mainly as a left wing back. Against us, he looks much more like a left back, but against other teams, we see him more in that kind of left mid position. But he takes a lot of set pieces. He's a good crosser of the ball, and again, if we're dominant in possession and you need a guy to play against Ross County or Dundee United and these types of teams, he can hit a good ball, he can hit a good cross, he can take corners, he can take some free kicks. And at 24, he's Irish. I don't think Dundee United would want too much money for him. I don't think this is a move. Irish youth international credentials there, and formerly in the Southampton Academy, and Southampton know a thing or two about youth football. You can definitely say that. Again, it's not one that I would be like, oh yeah, it's something we need to do, but I think he's worth throwing in there. Now, Aaron Esso was a player that, I don't think he made waves against us, certainly, but he was definitely quite striking the last couple of, or however many appearances he's made against us, 1 or 2, where physically in midfield and really defensively as well, because of how deep St Johnstone play against us, he looks kind of like a centre-back at times. He was quite striking, he was quite noticeable. He's in his first year, really, of professional football, by all accounts, this year. And really, he's not done anything that seismic domestically for St Johnstone. But I think if you've ever seen him, he is quite a striking guy, quite physically imposing, and there's a bit of raw potential there, you might say. He's got a contract with St Johnstone until 2027. Ghana Youth International credentials for him as well. And like I say, this is basically his first year of professional football by all accounts, but this is one we might have missed the boat on already, because I'm not too sure if it's like an active agent or a really good scouting network at play here, or some sort of link up with owners or whatever. But it looks like he's on his way to the MLS to go on loan to FC Dallas. I'm not expecting him to be a first team player there or whatever, but somebody's seen something in this guy where they want to ship him off to America for 9 months and try and get him up to speed to play at that level. So the first player that we've probably missed the boat on. Don't think it's a huge opportunity missed, but just one that I thought I would in on, as it were. But as we move into midfield with opportunities missed, I think we have to talk about Lennon Miller. I just think this one has went too far down the road. He's everyone's favourite player domestically for us to bring into the team. Obviously, if we'll go back and look at the midfield, what we kind of need, he kind of does tick that box of being a versatile midfielder that can play both sides of the ball. Does he have those defensive instincts that we are lacking? I would suggest not at this early stage in his career. Is that something he could flourish into? Perhaps, but I actually think he is better suited probably to fill Hitate's shoes. And if we're not going to lose Hitate this summer, which I don't think we will, I just don't think there's a spot in the starting 11 for him, in his eyes probably, and he's not going to sign up for that. Personally, I just don't see that happening. I could see him being very interested and motivated to go on the continent, like we've seen a lot of other Scottish young prospects do recently, and I could see him being up for playing for Celtic, like if he's going to play for us and then like advance his career through us, like later on maybe make a bigger move off the back of it, a la Ryan Christie's and Matt O'Reilly's and whoever else has played midfield and moved on from us quite well. But I just don't think that's going to be a sequence of events that unfolds. I don't think Hitate is done enough really for someone. Like, it could be a Kyogo situation where like the agent and the player just get extra, and I'm inferring this, I don't know this about Kyogo, but it feels like Ren was the first bus that came and he jumped on it, really, to be quite honest. And unless Hitate does that, I don't see him moving. And the amount of passion he shows on the pitch for us, I don't think he's going to be in a rush. If something good comes along, I think he would be interested and he would do it, but beyond that I just don't see it happening. So I just think we've missed the opportunity to get Miller where he would have been in a position of, okay, I'll come into the Celtic squad, that would be great for my career. It's just went too far down the road now. There'll be other teams interested that will give him the wages as well that probably we won't give him, and financially on the pitch, off the pitch, whatever, I just don't think it's going to happen. His statistics, his ratings are phenomenal for a player his age. His experience is incredible. It would be an asset to the team. He has got another year on his contract. It is the time for Motherwell to sell. It will be this summer he moves on, it feels like. Don't see him signing another extension. At €4 million, it would be an absolute snip, I think. I would go as high as probably like 6 or 7 million, to be honest with you, to get Lennon Miller in if it was at all achievable. But I don't see that happening, to be honest with you. I think this one is one we've missed. But one that we've not missed, and I would put like right underneath Lennon Miller in terms of like a domestic prospect midfielder that we should be interested in, and if we could get for like Luke McCowan level transfer fee, we should do it. And that is David Watson of Kilmarnock. Now, I've been really impressed by this guy whenever we've played him. A very energetic midfielder, looks quite tactically switched on as well. Sadly, this is a player that, you know, in terms of scoring matrices and statistics and whatever, his contributions aren't always really captured that well, you know, where you see his defensive position and his influence on keeping the game tight, etc. He's not a regular starter for Kilmarnock as well, it must be said. He is kind of in and out of the team. I'm not totally up to speed on why that is, but he is only 20. Kilmarnock do have quite a strong squad. Derek McInnes is a very good recruiter, in my point of view. And although quite a key player, plays often enough, is not like nailed into the team, and maybe that's why he's maybe not getting just quite as many plaudits as you see for the Lennon Miller or whatever. But I think David Watson is a player that really has that press ability that we want to see in midfield, really has a good engine to get around the pitch, and really we could get for probably peanuts. If we were going to look to get a sixth midfielder domestically, this would be my top pick. His contract is out in 2026, the final year of his contract, so Kilmarnock don't normally command huge transfer fees. 1.2, 1.5 million, I think would be a great bit of business for a guy like this as well. And even if it is like he's in the squad for the first 6 months, doesn't get a bit of a sniff, and then you loan him out and you kind of slowly develop him. He is only 20, so there is and you know, thanks to being at Kilmarnock, he's got mild kind of exposure to playing in Europe, I guess, similar to Johnny, well, not even to the extent of Johnny Kenny, you know. But you know, this is a guy I was impressed with. I think it would be quite a gettable player, quite affordable, and is someone I'd be quite keen on Celtic actually buying and doing business on. Quite similar to Josh Mulligan of Dundee. Josh Mulligan is kind of listed here as a midfielder, but he's more of a right back, isn't he? Whenever we've watched Dundee, and I think like if we brought Josh Mulligan in, you're kind of displacing Anthony Ralston, which, you know, we've kind of spoke about that already in the depth situation. He's like homegrown, he's in the squad, he's still playing for Scotland, he's still like, he's a bricky, he's good enough, you know. But Josh Mulligan has been very impressive for me. Can actually play a little bit of centre mid, but the centre mid that he plays for Dundee in their 3-5-2, it's still kind of right midish, because the other right winger will be playing more in a right back and a back five kind of setup, and then from that midfield three he can kind of prong out, and like he's been really good. You can see he's had enough good matches. Being in that wide position, he will give away possession a lot with crosses, and those players do tend to suffer statistically from that because they're just losing possession a lot. But a player that I'm always impressed with whenever I've seen him play, has big game performances in him, has been decisive already for Dundee, and you know, how old is he again? 22. Again, even if this is a player that we're bringing into the squad for the first 6 months and then maybe look to wrap him up and do something else with him transfer market wise, again, it wouldn't be bad business, you know, a la, you know, Quans and, you know, whatever else. Obviously Quans not totally worked out, but you know, this guy, if we put him in a better team in the league and all the rest of it, and he thought he was in the kind of Celtic sphere, as it were. You could see him improving. Scotland Youth International, he's out of contract this summer. So again, how much are you going to be paying for this guy? Probably next to nothing. Great stock, and again, like, he's been around professional football really since, what's that, May 2020? 4 or 5 seasons under his belt at the age of 22. Versatile, could be moulded into a few different type of player profile positions as well, because he does have that bit of versatility and does go into the final third. Could even be like a backup wing option potentially as well, or even just in that kind of centre mid, that busy kind of hybrid, box to box kind of situation. Now, Nektarios Triantis has actually been quite been a bit of a revelation this year in the SPFL. Hibs have had a really good, what was that run? They went on like 10, 11 games or something. He was a big part of it. He played very, very well against us. He's only 21 years of age. The Australian, I don't know if he's a full international, sorry, I didn't check that out before coming on to it. But certainly he's an Australian champion. He's already won the league over there, won the cup or whatever. And this season for Hibs, he has been one of their key players, takes lots of set pieces, has been very decisive for them with goals and assists, big game player. And again, when we come to look at the overall league statistics, you'll see that he is a player that's very prevalent, very dominant, very keen set piece taker, and very capable defensively. This guy seems like he has like the complete package, the complete profile in that sense. Hibs don't own this player, but their loan with him expires this summer and he'll be going back to his parent club. But this is a guy, like, again, has a bit of experience in winning in Australia for, what that's worth to you. But is currently owned by Sunderland. They have a contract with him until 2027. And, quite sincerely, like, for midfielder 6, domestically, like, Dave Watson would be my favourite in terms of like a prospect, a Scottish guy or whatever. But in terms of a guy that you actually have some belief and some hope in, could be like an actual first team contributor and could put some pressure perhaps on the first team. Domestically, this might be a really good option to come by as well, because statistically, defensively, has the nous that we're missing, and has a good set piece delivery, so maybe gives us more options with different types of balls we can play and that sort of thing. So someone I would certainly be interested in, depending on what the fee would be from Sunderland. And I don't mind, like, we've went through these different kind of themes transfer wise, where like last time we had Brendan Rodgers in, where we're signing like Edward from the PSG academy, and those sorts of players were who we were linked to all the time. And then, generally, but Celtic like to scout either like over the hill, in air quotes, like Premier League players like Schlupp and Scott Sinclair and Aaron Moy and Kolo Toure, these types of players, or we like to try and get like the Paddy Robertsons, the Matt O'Reillys, these guys, Moussa Dembele, that are maybe coming through from the youth setup and aren't quite breaking into the first team, or are maybe undervalued in England, and we could maybe shine them up, give them a better platform, give them better development opportunities and get more out of them. So I'm always like quite interested in some of those players that come up. I think Triantis is a great example of it, but what could be the perfect example of it currently in the league for me is Killian Phillips, another player who wears 88 on his shirt, Ireland Youth International as well, place of birth San Diego, so he's actually a dual national. His loan with St Mirren ends this summer. He scored a very fluky goal against us, if you remember the last time we played St Mirren, but he really stands out. Like, he has there's an obligation to buy with conditions. I didn't realise what that was. I didn't realise that was there, sorry, I should say. So maybe he becomes a St Mirren player and they can activate a permanent move there. That's interesting. But he is owned by Crystal Palace. Now, the reason I kind of bring up like Matt O'Reilly into that as well is like Matt O'Reilly, his contract ran out at Fulham and then he chose to go to MK Dons. Now, I'm quite certain Matt O'Reilly could have probably went to like Hibs or Aberdeen or something like that, because like St Mirren, these clubs are in the market for these players all the time. Killian Phillips is still under contract, actually just until this summer with Crystal Palace. So I think he will probably be making a move to St Mirren permanently, like in terms of technically off the back of this. I say I'm just looking at this as I'm doing it with ease. But if he was still under contract at Fulham, he might have found himself at loan at Kilmarnock or St Mirren or one of these places, so you just never know how things pan out for players in their youth development. But anyway, it looks like this guy might actually be super cheap. He's quite, I wouldn't say he's obviously nowhere near as good, but he kind of reminded me watching him of like Kulusevski. He's kind of like a tall, langy, kind of attacking midfielder type player, but he's very busy, does both sides of the game extremely well, and he's came through the Crystal Palace academy. It looks like he actually had a bit of a stint at Aberdeen. I hadn't noticed him up there, but again, he's been around first team football for the last couple of years at least, so he's not totally green behind the gills, as it were. Ireland Youth International caps also. And like again, he's an Irish player. I could see Brendan maybe just doing it. And this is a guy that on top of like the Josh Mulligan situation, like by the way, like there's a few guys here that are maybe available for free or super cheap. And Celtic, like if we could just hoover them up and then loan them back out again, keep one or two of them, however the manager decides to do it. Like I say, it's just more stock potentially for us to deal with in the transfer market if they're not good enough to actually come into the team with further assessment, further analysis. Now, if we were to sell Yang, probably, if we sold like Telio and Yang, and we're looking for another fledgling kind of winger to come into the squad that isn't going to demand first team minutes, but is, you know, up and coming and is someone that could go on and realise further potential, and we're to look domestically. Forwards, there's only two players I've got here. The first one probably isn't much of a surprise. It's Topi Kiskinen, who like isn't amazing. He's done quite okay for Aberdeen. He's been one of their better players overall, I think. I think the Aberdeen faithful see a good bit of promise in him. He's had some good moments in this game, and I think like if we signed this guy, for example, to replace Yang, and I mean like sincerely to replace Yang if we sold him. Otherwise, like we're not going to replace James Forrest by a guy like this. And our need for a more versatile forward that can actually improve the best 11 or the first 15 certainly or whatever is so high on the agenda. I don't think we make a transfer like this unless it is to replace Yang, essentially. But he's already won like the league and cup in Finland, so he's got a bit of winning credentials there. He's got some senior caps as well. I think he scored against England or assisted against England maybe at Wembley or something like that. Aberdeen would want a couple of bob for him. He's got a good contract with them. But like, yeah, if we sold Yang, I certainly wouldn't mind. Like Aberdeen paid like £1 million for him. They're going to want to get some profit. Helsinki are probably on for a cut of it as well. But yeah, if we sold Yang, I'd be quite happy to sign Kiskinen. Now, again, I don't see this move happening unless Adam Ida moved on. But because, yeah, I just don't see us having another target or bigger striker profile coming into the squad while we have Adam Ida. I think he is the man for that job, and I don't think we're going to like handcuff that situation. So domestically, like if we lost Ida or somehow we wanted another domestic homegrown player that was similar to Ida, I've really liked what I've seen from Kieran Bowie. He's only kind of recently come into the Hibs squad, but he's looked the part for the most part, and like again, he's a wee bit greener behind the gills, as it were, but a big guy, puts himself about. And like, you know, if Johnny Kenny's out on loan, if we did somehow not have Ida after that transfer window, a guy like this wouldn't be too bad to come into the squad to kind of fill that void, as it were, of the big target man, you know, the guy that can maybe hold it up. He's 22, he's for Kirkcaldy, 11 youth caps, 3 goals, and like, yeah, contract's up in 2028. Hibs would want a few bob for him. Anything else to know about? Yeah, like he's actually previously been in the Fulham Academy. So yeah, has a bit of pedigree there, has went down south and been involved in that elite environment for a couple of years before coming back to Scotland. Didn't actually know that again before coming onto this, that's fun. So for the final segment of the video, and I'm aware now at this point of recording, this will be a long one. I don't know if every episode will be quite this long because we've had a lot of setup in this one, but thanks to everyone that's still with us in this part of the video, because I do think this is a nice bit of the payoff here. You're going to see some of the players that or a lot of the players that we've covered show up very, very well against even Celtic and Rangers players domestically. These statistics are captured over the last 15 games, so this is like, you know, relevant form. I've not done it over the entire season yet because I'd rather do that when it is like end of season, whereas right now, like we've had the last 15 matches over the last like 2 months essentially. So this is really like how guys are performing now at the sharp end of the season. Once, you know, all the hoo-ha of early season preparations and, you know, teething problems, maybe managerial changes, some of them come into the teams later, of course, and whatever else, you know. But the first set of statistics I'm going to highlight here is the defensive statistics grouped up together, okay? And this comes in the grouping of what's called a double-double, a triple-double, and a triple-triple. And this is tackles, interceptions, and a lot of duels won all together within the one match. So this is a really powerful statistic for seeing guys that have had like a really commanding defensive performance, whatever position of the pitch they find themselves in. These statistics are captured for forwards as well as defenders and midfielders, obviously. But the double-double, the weakest of the three of them, we don't see many Celtic or Rangers players that high over the last 15 matches for them. Raskin is probably the top one there. But we see there's our Ferry shout. There's Mulligan ahead of the likes of Austin Trusty. Killian Phillips makes it into here ahead of Callum McGregor. There's Carter Vickers alongside Triantis. Penrice not too far behind. One of these L Millers will be Lennon. One of them will be, what's the other guy's name? Is it Liam? The one that plays right mid, right back for Hibs. I'm not going to click on him to find out who's who. There's that boy Taylor that we mentioned ahead of Hefty. That's funny to see, as well as Jack McKenzie, who's quite well thought of at fullback. Triple-double is a bit more of a slightly more powerful version of that. You know, if they've had a slightly better game in that sense of being all-encompassing defensively. Triantis, third in the list, so that defensive midfield like nose kind of showing itself there. Will Ferry not too far behind. Again, we get two L Millers next to Penrice, all kind of reigning high together on this list, ahead of, again, some familiar faces like Alistair Johnson. Lyle Cameron, who's moving to Rangers in the summer from Dundee, is there on the list, just alongside that Jerry Taylor. And then the most powerful version of this, a triple-triple. There's not many of them, but Penrice has got one in the last 15 matches. And as you can see, this isn't something that's captured by a lot of players. Cammy Devlin in midfield for Hearts, reigning top of the list on that one. And there's some other fun statistics here, like error led to shot. Austin Trusty is top of that list. We get Triantis there. It's probably not a great list to kind of scroll down. Effective clearances, maybe something non-Celtic teams need to do a lot more of. And yeah, we're just finding it's big botchy centre-backs, aren't we? Tackles one is always a very interesting one because this is winning the ball, this is tackling, you know. Again, Triantis in the top, what's that, 6 in the list, ahead of Raskin. Up there, even Spangler, by the way, fair play to him. St Johnstone having a bit of a resurgence. He's probably playing a big part in that. Josh Mulligan finds himself very prominently in this list, as does Penrice and Killian Phillips and Will Ferry, all ahead of a lot of Celtic and Rangers players. There's Miller. Kiskinen even gets up on this one. Good to see that defensive contribution there from a forward. And then, yeah, here's the likes of McGregor and Trusty down on the list. Dyson Maeda as well. Good to see him reigning so high on the list for a forward. Alistair Johnson there now. So, yeah, Triantis does come out quite favourably here, doesn't he? Blocked crosses, is that a statistic we're interested in? Maybe not. Blocks in general. Topi Kiskinen, well done to him. Great defensive contribution there. This feels like it's more of a forward-focused, midfielders that are maybe on the edge of the box, just putting their body in front of the ball. Mulligan there. Clearance off the line is a fun statistic, although it's not a very common one. Killian Phillips is there. Last man tackle is quite a high value one again, but we don't see it too often. And that Astley, by the way, I didn't feature him. He's a centre-back at Dundee. Welsh Youth International. I'm not sure if they've got him permanently or on loan. But I don't think we'd be interested in a centre-back that's not Scottish or homegrown. So, but good to see he's kind of come up there with some important statistics. Possession loss is a statistic you don't want to be high on, but it is acceptable for wide players because of the amount of crosses they put in. Penrice, the most active crosser of the ball, I would suggest, by this statistic, rather than being wasteful with possession, versus maybe a bit more of a Spittle who's maybe more midfield-based. Ferry, very high on this list again as well, from left wing back. There's Killian Phillips as well. He's putting a lot of deliveries in. Jordan Amisa up there with a lot of long balls, same with Trevor Carson. I guess we're seeing the long ball goalkeepers showing up quite prominently in this list. There's Triantis, kind of lower down on the list for the other high volume players. There is Kiskinen and Mulligan also. Possession one is a much better statistic. Triantis, 101 possession one in the last 15 matches, top in the division for that, ahead of Raskin, ahead of McGregor. Josh Mulligan not too far behind as well, by the way. And again, you can see kind of Lyle Cameron's. There's the Ferries again, Taylor again, and do we see anyone else of note? Killian Phillips coming into this as well, ahead of a fair amount of Celtic and Rangers players. Penrice just about sneaks into the page there as well, as does Kiskinen. So possession one, that's good. Duels one, a high value statistic for sure. Dalby, again, I was kind of close to featuring him, but unless we sold Ida, I don't see us after a guy like Dalby ever, to be honest with you. He's not homegrown, he's not young enough, he's, you know... Yeah. Triantis, again, very prominent on the statistics here, reigning quite high. Penrice, duels one, very good to see that from fullback. Killian Phillips, again, the same. You know, like Josh Mulligan, there is like a half a dozen players here that, like, see if Celtic did just hoover them up. You know, we've had many a worse ways to spend money and way worse managed transfer windows. I'm not totally against it in some ways. Interceptions in the last 15 games. Triantis again in the top 5. Cammy Devlin is really high in a lot of these statistics. I think I've seen links to him with the Bundesliga in January, so we'll see what happens with him overall. Ferry again is up in this list, as is wee Richie Taylor, by the way. Josh Mulligan, Penrice, the Millers, so high enough in the interception category. Accurate passing, it can be a bit misleading because, yeah, it's a possession-based statistic. Final third passing, do we see much revealed from this? Again, Penrice, very prominently placed. A lot of Celtic and Rangers players dominating this statistic, certainly. Triantis gets in there, as does Mulligan again. So again, these players are showing up. Accurate long balls is always a fun one as well. Goalkeepers kind of dominating this. But yeah, again, Triantis and Raskin, the kind of first non-goalkeepers to kind of come into the fray here, as we're seeing with Iredale. Lewis Mayo, he's coming up quite high as well. Lewis Mayo, how old is he? 25. By the way, Lewis Mayo might be a better fourth choice centre back than Welsh or Murray. Perhaps that's one we've kind of missed on this video, perhaps, but we maybe caught it towards the end. And then, yeah, these numbers were still decent volume, but we're kind of just getting into the weeds of defenders and stuff. Passes into the opposition, a very valuable statistic for the right players. Do we see anything revealing here? Not overly. Contests won is quite valuable. Dribbles won. Oh, wow. Triantis, 21 contests won, driving through midfield here. These statistics are normally captured by wingers like Kuhn. I've been expecting to see dominating this list. I expect Jota to rise up this list as games go by. That's the sort of statistic this is, the sort of manoeuvre it is to be captured. Penrice is quite dominant up here. Richie Taylor there again as well. Mulligan quite high, ahead of Maeda. Hefty's there. Yilmaz, Hatate, Yang, all quite high on this list. But again, we're seeing some of these guys doing very well domestically. Very surprised Triantis is so high on this one. Big chances created and attempted assists are lovely statistics as well for those guys we're looking to see that have delivery. Penrice is top, Triantis is fourth, Engels right in the middle. Nicky Cadden, he's 28, one of the best crossers in the league. If we didn't aspire to be Champions League level, he'd be worth looking at and talking about, but I'll mention him here now quickly. Kiskinen, Ferry, Hatate, all kind of up next to each other here. Mulligan next to McCowan and co, Maeda and such. So good to see for their big chances created. Attempted assists. And these are chances that are like meaningful. You know, they've swung the ball in, they've filled the ball down the channel. When someone's got a good shot away, they should have scored. They got a shot on target kind of situation. And there's Fraser Murray again, by the way. A 25-year-old Kilmarnock midfielder. Maybe been overlooked in this video perhaps. But Penrice dominating attempted assists. Ferry's nice and high up there next to Engels, of course, who takes all of our set pieces. Anything else that's revealing down here, perhaps? Not as much. Seeing that Triantis isn't actually getting that much up here shows that his passing, like, he is a deeper line player, isn't he? He is a defensive midfielder, quite firmly. And then we get into the goalkeeper statistics at the back here, which probably aren't worth covering. But yeah, we've now created a scouting list of our own. And I look forward to building this list throughout the rest of these videos. And, you know, like, we've got a nice little batch here. I didn't add the guy that's going on loan to the MLS, but I added everyone else from the list. But then we can compare all of their statistics, everyone that's in here, in a very nice way as well, so that we can, you know, measure these guys against each other. And it'll be interesting to see where some of these guys actually do move to, because we're not going to sign all of them, obviously. And some of them are pretty decent players. It'll be fun to see how they kind of progress across the transfer window, as well as the players that we do actually go on to sign. Again, very much appreciative, very thankful for anyone that's watched all the way to the end of this video, of course. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy the videos that will come next. We'll be scouting like the J League, La Liga, other leagues across Europe, MLS, South America perhaps also, and we'll be doing this kind of all the way to this transfer window. If you haven't done so already, please do like and subscribe, share and retweet and all that good stuff, guys. On screen now is some other stuff we've made YouTube thinks you might enjoy. In case you want to hear more of me, feel free to click on one of them now. Otherwise, hail hail, and I'll catch you on the next one.